For 4 years, she left a sandwich on the same street corner. No questions asked, no thanks expected. Then one day, 12 Marines walked into her diner with a folded flag and a truth that would change her life forever. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel as a sign of support. Every morning for the past 4 years, Ellie Harper passed the same man on the corner of Willow and 5th. Rain or shine, snow or sun, he sat outside the old boarded-up laundromat, a tattered army duffel beside him, and a cardboard sign that simply read, "Hungry but hopeful." God bless Ellie, a middle-aged diner waitress in the small town of Maple Falls, North Carolina, never asked his name. He never offered it. At first, she'd just nod in his direction, offering the occasional cup of coffee or a leftover sandwich from the diner. But as weeks turned to months and months turned to years, her small gestures became routine. A slice of meatloaf, a thermos of soup, even a piece of blueberry pie on Sundays. He always said thank you, softly with eyes that never quite met hers. Ellie's co-workers teased her sometimes. "You're feeding that guy like he's your long-lost uncle," her friend June would say, rolling her eyes as she refilled ketchup bottles. "He could be dangerous, you know." But Ellie brushed it off. "I don't think he's dangerous, just broken," she'd reply. She'd seen enough brokenness in her life to recognize it in others. Her husband Charlie had died in a construction accident 15 years ago. Her only son Luke was stationed overseas with the Marines and hadn't been home in 3 years. She understood loneliness and hunger too. One cold December morning, Ellie noticed the man wasn't at his usual spot. She paused, scanning the block, worry settling in her chest like wet cement. But there was no sign of him, no duffel, no cardboard sign. By the 3rd day of his absence, she asked around. No one seemed to know anything. Some assumed he'd moved on to another town, or worse. Ellie couldn't explain why it bothered her so much. She didn't even know the man's name, and yet his absence left a strange void in her daily routine. That evening, she left a paper bag near the spot, just in case, with a handwritten note tucked inside. "Hope you're okay. E." Weeks passed, then months, and just as winter melted into spring, Ellie had nearly convinced herself to let it go. Until one Tuesday afternoon, the diner bell rang, and in walked 12 tall men in dress blues. They were Marines, and they were looking for her. The entire diner fell silent. Forks clinked awkwardly against plates. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Even the hiss of the grill in the back seemed to pause when the 12 Marines stepped inside Ellie's diner, their polished shoes clicking against the black and white checkered floor. They looked straight out of a movie, stiff uniforms, solemn expressions, and medals pinned proudly to their chests. Ellie, standing behind the counter with a coffee pot in her hand, froze. The lead Marine, a square-jawed man with graying temples and the air of someone used to command, stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said politely but firmly, "are you Ellie Harper?" She set the coffee pot down slowly. Yes, that's me." He nodded and turned slightly, signaling the others. "We've come to thank you." "Thank me?" Ellie looked confused, her brow furrowed. "For what?" Another Marine stepped forward, this one younger, maybe early 30s, with a warm smile and eyes that seemed to carry something deeper than gratitude. "Ma'am," he said, his voice more gentle, "we were sent by Sergeant Adam Brooks." Ellie blinked. "Who?" The younger Marine continued. "The man you've been feeding." For years, Ellie's breath caught. "The guy from the laundromat?" They nodded in unison. The lead Marine pulled out a small envelope and handed it to her. "He asked us to deliver this to you. He wanted you to know the truth." With shaking hands, Ellie opened the envelope. Inside was a neatly folded letter and a photograph. She recognized the man in the photo instantly. It was him. Cleaner, healthier looking, but definitely him. Standing proudly in uniform, flanked by fellow Marines. The letter began. "Dear Ellie, you never asked for my name, and I never offered it. Not because I didn't trust you, but because I was ashamed. I'm Adam Brooks, formerly Sergeant in the United States Marine Corps. I served 3 tours overseas and came home a broken man. I lost everything. My purpose, my family, my will to live. But you, You never turned me away. You fed me. You saw me. And you gave me something I hadn't had in years. Dignity. Ellie's eyes welled up. She looked around the diner. The regulars watched silently. June had a hand over her mouth, and even the cook peeked out from the kitchen, eyes wide. She returned to the letter. Because of you, I got help. I reached out to my old unit. I got sober, got a job, and eventually I got back into the reserves. I'm standing again, Ellie, because you never let me fall completely. I told my brothers about you. They insisted we all come and say thank you. Ellie pressed a hand to her chest, her heart thudding wildly. The lead Marine gave her a soft smile. You fed one of our own. Now it's our turn. Ellie looked up. What do you mean? Another Marine stepped forward, holding a folded flag and a plaque. We're here to honor you, Ellie Harper. You didn't just save a man. You saved a Marine. The Marines stood in a neat line in front of the counter, their faces a mixture of respect and admiration. Ellie stood there, unable to process it all. The diner had gone eerily quiet, save for the soft rustling of the letter in her hands and the slow tick of the wall clock. You, Ellie stammered, unable to find the right words. She glanced down at the plaque in the younger Marine's hands. It was gleaming brass, engraved with her name, and the words, "For exceptional kindness and service to a fellow Marine." Ma'am, this is just a small token, the lead Marine said, but it means a lot to us. You gave more than food. You gave hope. Ellie swallowed hard, glancing over at June, who had a hand over her mouth, eyes glistening. The other regulars, usually so loud and chatty, were silent, watching her as if she were some sort of hero. Ellie wasn't a hero. She was just a woman trying to make it through her days in a town that was too small for anyone to forget anyone else. Her hands trembled as she placed the letter down on the counter, the weight of the moment sinking in. I didn't do anything special, she said, her voice quiet but steady. I just gave him food. I don't even know how he was able to. Ellie, the younger Marine interrupted, his voice softer now, more personal. You didn't just give him food, you gave him consistency. You gave him care when no one else did. That's what kept him going. Ellie felt her throat tighten. But I didn't know anything about him. I didn't know he was. She trailed off, looking down at the letter again. The lead Marine, Sergeant Matthews, nodded. We know. That's what makes it even more remarkable. You took the time to offer him something simple, compassion. That's rare these days. A quiet chuckle came from the back of the diner. Ellie turned to see her cook, Tom, standing in the kitchen doorway with his arms crossed, a grin on his face. Maybe next time, Ellie, you could give me a little of that compassion when I burn the toast. The tension in the room broke, and a few chuckles echoed around the diner. Ellie couldn't help but smile, the heaviness in her chest starting to lift. The younger Marine handed her the flag. This is for you. It's the same flag that flew over our base on the day Adam came back to us, after he'd hit rock bottom. He wanted you to have it. Ellie took the flag, her hands now shaking more than ever. It was folded neatly, but it felt like more than just fabric. It felt like an entire journey, a symbol of hope that she hadn't known she'd been a part of. You know, Ellie said, her voice growing stronger, I never did it for anything in return. I just did what I thought was right. And that's what makes you extraordinary, Sergeant Matthews said. You didn't need recognition. You didn't need a reward. But sometimes the right thing is seen by the right people, and they make sure you know just how much it matters. Ellie looked up at the group of Marines, standing tall in their dress blues. A swell of emotion rose in her chest, threatening to overwhelm her. She had always done what she thought was right, but now with these men here before her, it felt like she had been seen, truly seen. Thank you, she whispered, clutching the flag to her chest. Thank you all. Adam's letter had said he had found his purpose again. But in this moment, Ellie realized that perhaps she had found a part of hers too. She hadn't just been feeding a homeless man, she had been feeding hope. The crowd in the diner had thinned, but the Marines lingered. A few had sat down at booths, sipping coffee and sharing stories with curious patrons. Ellie found herself sitting at her usual counter stool, the folded flag and plaque resting beside her. like sacred objects in a modest chapel. Her hands still trembled, not from fear, but from the enormity of it all. She kept glancing at the photograph from the letter. Adam Brooks. Now he had a name, a history, a life beyond that street corner. Sergeant Matthews approached her again, holding a small wooden box. He wanted you to have this too. Ellie opened it carefully. Inside was a set of military dog tags, weathered and worn, the metal dulled from years of wear. They bore the name Brooks, Adam R., and a string of numbers. She traced the letters with her finger. He carried these through all 3 of his deployments, Matthews explained. When he was on the streets, he kept them hidden, said they reminded him of who he used to be. But when he started getting better, he said they reminded him of what he could become again. Ellie felt her throat tighten. Why give them to me? The younger Marine, Corporal Jensen, had come over and answered gently. Because you were the reason he became that man again. He said you were the one person who looked at him like he still mattered. That meant everything. Ellie brushed away a tear. I wish I could have talked to him, gotten to know him beyond those small exchanges. Jensen smiled. He said you knew him better than most ever did. Sometimes the smallest gestures speak the loudest. A pause settled between them before Ellie asked the question that had been circling in her mind all day. Where is he now? Sergeant Matthews shifted his weight slightly. He's stationed out west at a veteran rehab facility, helping other homeless vets transition back into civilian life. He's built a network, housing programs, job training. He credits you for the spark. Ellie covered her mouth, overcome with emotion. She had no idea. A sudden thought struck her. Do you think, would it be all right if I wrote to him? Matthews nodded. He'd like that very much. Actually, he said if you ever wanted to visit, there's a standing invitation. Ellie let out a small, teary laugh. Well, I haven't been west of the Mississippi since my honeymoon, but maybe it's time. You'd be welcome, Jensen said. There are others like Adam who could use someone like you. Ellie looked out the window at the quiet corner of Willow and Fifth, the same corner where for 4 years she had dropped off sandwiches, thermoses, and little notes in plain brown bags. A corner she now realized had been the start of something far greater than a meal. It had been the start of redemption, not just for Adam, but maybe for her too. Word traveled fast in Maple Falls. By the next morning, Ellie's Diner wasn't just the cozy breakfast joint on the corner anymore. It was the place where the Marines came. Locals poured in, not just for Ellie's famous biscuits and gravy, but to ask questions, offer handshakes, and hear the story firsthand. Even the mayor stopped by, presenting Ellie with a certificate of appreciation from the town. She smiled politely, shook his hand, and made sure he got a warm plate of scrambled eggs. But in her heart, none of that mattered more than the quiet, personal change happening inside her. She wasn't used to the attention. She never fed Adam for recognition. In fact, she'd never told anyone much about her habit of bringing him meals, not even her son Luke, which made it all the more surprising when Luke called that night. Hey, Mom, his deep voice came through the speaker. Heard you had a little situation at the diner yesterday. Ellie chuckled, sitting at her kitchen table with the plaque in her lap. You could call it that. 12 Marines in full-dress blues walking in like something out of a movie. I saw the pictures online, Luke said. Sarge showed me. Everyone at the base is talking about it. Ellie raised her eyebrows. Really? Yeah. Word spreads quick in the Corps. They're calling you Mama Ellie now. She laughed softly, heart warmed by the nickname. Well, I guess that makes me a Marine mom twice over. There was a pause on the line. I'm proud of you, Mom, Luke said. You always taught me to do what's right, even when no one's watching. I guess you've been living that lesson more than I realized. Ellie swallowed the lump in her throat. I just gave him a little food, Luke. That's all. No, he said gently. You gave him humanity. After they hung up, Ellie stood at her front window and looked out over Maple Falls. It was quiet, peaceful, but something inside her had shifted. The next morning, she arrived at the diner early, before the sun rose, before the first customer stepped through the door. She put on a fresh pot of coffee, pulled out a clean notepad, and began to write. It was a letter to Adam. She told him about the visit, about how proud everyone was of him, about how his story had touched the town. She told him about Luke calling, about the nickname Mama Ellie, and then she added something new. Adam, I've been thinking, maybe I could do more. Maybe there are others out there like you, right here in Maple Falls. Maybe this diner can become more than just a place to eat. Maybe it can be a place to heal too. She finished the letter with a simple promise. Thank you for trusting me with your story. I'm going to pay it forward, just like you did. She sealed the envelope, tucked it into her purse, and got ready for another day. But Ellie Harper was no longer just a waitress. She was becoming something more. The next few weeks transformed Ellie's Diner from a quiet local spot into something more vibrant, more meaningful. It started with a corkboard. Ellie had cleared a wall near the front windows, painted it in red, white, and blue, and pinned a large sign at the top. In honor of Sergeant Adam Brooks, Help One, Heal Many. Beneath it, she encouraged people to leave notes, job posting, service offers, anything that might help someone struggling. Soon the board filled up. Handwritten cards offering free haircuts for veterans. Flyers from local therapists willing to do pro bono sessions. Business cards from employers happy to give someone a second chance. Then came the meal vouchers. Ellie placed a jar by the register labeled Pay It Forward Meals. Customers could drop in a few bucks to cover meals for anyone in need. No questions asked. Within days, the jar overflowed. Families, students, even traveling truckers contributed. The town might have been small, but its heart was growing larger by the day. And then came Liam. He was young, barely 20, with eyes too tired for his age. He wandered in one cold Tuesday morning, hands in the pockets of a tattered hoodie, looking unsure if he even belonged. Ellie spotted him immediately. She recognized that same lost look Adam used to have. "Take any seat you want, hun," she said warmly. "Coffee's hot and the pancakes are on the house." He hesitated. I don't have any money." Ellie nodded toward the jar. "Someone already paid for you. Sit, eat." Liam sat at the far booth, and Ellie brought him a plate herself. As he picked at his food, she sat across from him, uninvited but welcome. "What's your name?" she asked. "Liam," he mumbled. "Just got out of a rehab program. Wasn't going anywhere, so they dropped me off in this town to start fresh." Ellie smiled gently. "Good a place as any." They talked for nearly an hour. Liam told her he'd been dishonorably discharged after struggling with addiction, and he didn't expect anyone to care. But Ellie cared. She listened. She gave him a part-time job washing dishes and connected him with a local counselor who'd volunteered services through the board. Within days, Liam became a fixture. Quiet but dependable. The kind of person who just needed someone to believe in him. And he wasn't the only one. Ellie's Diner became a haven. Veterans, struggling young adults, single parents, they all found their way there, drawn by word of mouth and the promise of a warm plate and a kind word. Some came just to read the notes on the board. Others came to leave their own. And Ellie? She became the glue, the quiet force turning pancakes and coffee into something healing. One night, as she was closing up, Ellie stared at Adam's photograph behind the counter. Next to it hung a new photo, Liam, in his apron, smiling with a plate of waffles in hand. She reached up and adjusted both pictures so they sat perfectly side by side. A past saved, a future just beginning. The air in Maple Falls turned crisp as fall settled over the town, casting golden light across the streets and bringing a quiet calm to Ellie's Diner each morning. The buzz from the Marines' visit had quieted, but its impact lingered like the scent of warm cinnamon rolls from the kitchen. Ellie moved with purpose these days, her steps a little lighter, her smile a little wider. Something had changed in her, not in a flashy, dramatic way, but in the way someone changes when they finally understand the impact of a single act of kindness. It had been 2 months since she received Adam's letter. The wall of notes had grown into a living monument, testimonies of hope, resilience, and second chances. Liam, once broken and uncertain, now ran the kitchen on weekday mornings. He took pride in every plate, greeting each customer with quiet warmth. Ellie had watched him bloom like spring flowers pushing through frozen soil. Then one Thursday afternoon, the doorbell chimed, and in stepped a man she hadn't seen in 5 years. He looked healthier, stronger. His frame filled out, his face clean-shaven. He wore a simple brown jacket and jeans, but there was a quiet dignity in the way he carried himself. His eyes, though, gave him away. They were the same soft brown she remembered from all those mornings on the corner. Ellie stood frozen behind the counter. "Adam?" she whispered. He smiled, small and sincere. "Hi, Ellie." For a moment, neither of them moved. The noise of the diner faded into the background. Ellie slowly rounded the counter, her eyes welling with tears. She reached out, uncertain, and Adam stepped forward to embrace her. "You came back," she murmured. "I had to," he said, voice cracking. "I owed you more than a letter." They sat together in the booth near the window, where Ellie usually folded napkins. Adam told her about the rehab center, about the veterans he worked with, about how her kindness had pushed him to choose life over despair. He'd used her story, their story, as the opening to every talk he gave. "You made me believe I still mattered," he said, "so I started helping others feel that way too." Ellie shook her head, awestruck. "All I did was bring you sandwiches." Adam chuckled. "And that was more than enough." That evening, the diner filled up as word spread that the Adam Brooks had returned. Liam brought out slices of Ellie's famous apple pie for everyone, and Adam stood to say a few words. He didn't make it grand. He kept it real, about hardship, hope, and the power of small acts. He finished with this: "You never know what someone's carrying, but if you show them kindness, you just might be lifting more than you'll ever understand." Ellie sat at the counter that night after everyone had gone, staring at the now 3 photos on the wall. Hers with Adam, Adam with Liam, and the Marines from that unforgettable day. 3 lives, 1 act, endless ripples. She sipped her tea, the lights dimming around her, and smiled. The corner of Willow and 5th wasn't just a diner anymore. It was a lighthouse, and Ellie Harper, the woman who simply gave a homeless man food, was its keeper. Ellie's simple act of kindness, offering food without judgment, sparked a ripple effect that transformed not only one man's life, but an entire community. What began with a sandwich grew into second chances, healing, and purpose for many. Her story reminds us that we don't need to be rich, powerful, or famous to make a difference. We just need to care. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still matters. And the next time you pass someone in need, remember, your smallest gesture might just be the turning point in their story.